Okay, it's been 3 weeks, John, since we last broadcast.
Time is flying.
All right, so what have we got to talk about this week?
So we had a quick little brainstorm and the we both threw out some ideas and the one I was saying was two words that I put together. I'm not sure I've ever put together before. Systemic conversations. And so I asked ChatGPT, does such a thing exist? If so, what is it? Who's working on it? Uh, what are they saying about it? Where could it go next? And you won't be too surprised that it made some stuff up
Oh, I'm sure.
and came back. So does that
ChatGPT always likes to please you.
do you want to kind of hear what it said and see if we've got some energy
Tell me
here?
what it says, because the phrase doesn't do anything for me at all, particularly.
Wow, okay. There's about four boxes of responses. The first one is like a definition. It says, yes, systemic conversations is a meaningful and emerging concept. Okay. It may go by different names in various disciplines. At its core, it refers to conversations that are intentionally designed to facilitated to address whole systems, interdependencies, and multiple perspectives simultaneously. I'm already not sure that's what I meant by it. So maybe I'll say.
Okay.
And then it says, here's a breakdown to help you grasp what they are and who's exploring them. Um, so yeah, let's just stick with that. Intentionally designed or facilitated to address whole systems. That's not quite what I meant. In fact, I meant the exact opposite. I guess where it's coming from for me is I'm doing all this work with this organization called Power and Systems and a workshop called the Organization Workshop, where they look at system that what do hierarchies or what do organizations often look like, what systemic patterns do they sort of fall into, or they what happened senior leaders or people in a top space often do the same thing, no matter what person is put into it. So there's, predictable patterns we see inside organizations. That's where I think systemic conversations, I was going from like a content and a process point of view. Do we, is there a, is there a way that conversations have to go and you can't break that? It's very similar to your adjacent possibilities. Is, I don't know, is there some bigger thing that conversations can only go I talk, then you talk, I talk, then you talk.
Uh-huh.
Something like that. A conversational process, systemic conversational process. And then systemic conversational content, I just made that up. Um, I guess that would be like weather and sports and commute or, you know, politics, religion, that kind of stuff. Is, does that make any sense at all? Is there
No.
systemically across everyone, there's a few go-to topics.
I can think of sort of conversations about systems and as you're just saying, taking a sort of a multi-perspective view and recognizing interdependencies and what have you. Um, I can kind of relate to that, and I'm not too sure what I'd call that a good conversation anyway.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Regardless, um, yeah, you kind of caught me a little bit on the hop because I've not come across the term. I've not thought about the term, and I'm not really. Um, it's come up here saying preparing to live stream on my screen.
Oh, mine still says being live streamed.
Oh, okay. Hopefully we are live streaming. I
Maybe
don't
it's
know.
working. Oh, well, then
Um,
let me keep reading a little bit and see if this does
yeah,
anything
go
for you.
on.
The
Read a bit more.
four little boxes. What are systemic conversations? And it gives three things. Systemic conversations are dialogues that aim to surface patterns, structures, and relationships that already exist in the group. Okay.
Okay.
That's kind of what you just said, and I'm with you. I'm not sure that's a big
Well,
conversation.
that's a little bit different. That's about say surfacing
Surface patterns.
relationships and patterns within the the people involved in the conversation.
Here, this might be closer. This is still about the content, though. Second point is systemic conversations are not just about individual opinions or problems, but about understanding how parts interact and contribute to larger dynamics.
So it's a conversation about systems.
Yeah. Yeah, which that's not quite, I don't know. And then last one, systemic conversations are often focused on collective sense making, pattern recognition, and adaptive action rather than simply decision making or consensus.
So that's a little bit more about the process.
Closer, yeah. And then a bunch of other stuff. And then you might, so the second part, because I asked who's working on it, it says Peter Senge, Margaret Wheatley, Barry Oshry, David Bohm.
Yeah, I don't know that the Barry who? Barry?
Barry Oshry. Oh, okay.
I don't
Barry
know the name.
Oshry. He's okay. So I was just mentioning
I
Power
know
and
the others.
Systems as an organization, and they have three different products. We'll call them. They're experiential learning things. Barry Oshry is the researcher that that pulled those together. So yeah, wow, I can't believe we've never talked about Barry.
No, no.
Wow. Okay. All right. So maybe
Okay.
we could go that's a whole separate path, but related, and maybe that would help. And then watch. That's one. There's another category. Listen. Jervis Bush and Bob Marshak, generative
Okay, right.
images.
Yeah. No, those
That's
guys.
there. Um,
Oh,
human-centered
okay.
des
So,
human-centered
well, that's,
design and
that's dialogical OD. And I guess that's, you could look at that in some way as being systemic conversation, I guess.
maybe. And then it says design thinking and systems practice, human-centered design and the systems sanctuary and school of system change. I
Okay.
don't think I recognize them. And then last one, it says, I've known the name. Is it Adam Kahane? Do you know that name?
No, I don't know that
I
name.
recognize the name. And Otto Scharmer from
Okay, not
Presencing. We've
Dharma,
talked
yeah.
about arming.
Yeah, we need to have
Um,
an argument about theory use sometime.
Theory U. Okay, that could be a whole separate one. It's a good one. Um, okay, maybe I don't know. I still like these next two things. See if this does anything. What are they finding? Break down siloed thinking, build shared understanding, enable emergent solutions, and foster psychological safety. Does that do anything for you?
Okay, but it's sort of giving a label to all the sorts of things that um, are meaningful to us and
Yeah,
meaningful to
it's
conversational
close.
leadership. I mean, all those things are what conversational leadership are about, and it's just giving it a name.
A slightly different thing. Well, okay, so then where I felt the energy there is why don't we go the Barry Oshry thing for a second because
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Get
that's
me
where
there.
the wording came from me. Okay, let me see if I can do this quick. So Barry started his research 50 or 60 years ago. Um, a lot of it was sort of World War One, World War Two, same type of Kurt Lewin work of like, why do people behave differently in groups?
Okay.
And then it specifically became inside organizations. Pretty much every organization is a hierarchy, and even if they claim not to be, hierarchical dynamics still seem to come into play. So he
Right.
created this thing where he calls it, and this might, if you and I have talked about it, this will bring it back to memory for you. He calls it top, middle, bottom customer is what he calls it.
Okay.
And he what he tries to be clear about is he calls them spaces or context or conditions. He doesn't directly mean like top senior leadership, middle managers, bottom individual contributors, and customers. What he means is sometimes you're in the top space, which
Okay.
means like you're guiding, directing, and in that same meeting, in that same conversation, you might also be in for a few minutes be in the bottom space, which is like you're being
Yeah, yeah.
told yeah, that whole
That
thing.
makes sense.
So system dynamics or seeing the system, he talks about, I love this phrase. I don't think you and I have ever shared this one. He says, um, the puddle was wet before you stepped in it, which is a funny way of saying like before you got into the organization and before you got into the hierarchy, it was already wet. It was already what it was. Yes, you matter, but also the system dynamics are
can get
so
rather
powerful.
philosophical here, and
Yeah,
until you step in it, is the puddle really wet? I mean, because
exactly. Yeah,
the
yeah,
wet's
yeah.
the property of the relationship between the water and your skin.
See, exactly. So that's the system dynamics he's talking, the ways tops and middles, we see a pattern there, middles and bottoms, customers and tops. There's like these relationships that are very predictable as to almost no matter who is in it, there's a certain dynamic that happens.
Yeah, I
That's
can
what I
see
think I'm trying
why
to
that'd
apply to
be a
conversations.
useful way of looking at things from a d dynamic perspective.
Yeah. And that's it. I mean, I don't know if there's anything there or not. Maybe, maybe not.
Well, there's nothing here that you said that's kind of new. It's just maybe a different label, or maybe not a different label, but a label that I've certainly not used
Hmm.
in the past to describe conversation in any way. But you've given me like all good conversations, you've given me something to go away and research and think about and try to figure out for myself. But there seems to be like two ways of looking at it there. It can be a conversation about systems,
Hmm.
or it can be looking at the conversation itself as a system, because a
Yeah.
conversation is a complex adaptive system, or I think um, often called a complex responsive process might be a better label for it.
Hmm.
Um,
And in
and
that complex responsive process, are there patterns that we see over and over and over?
there are patterns that repeat, yes.
Yeah. And then what are they?
And
And are they healthy?
you can apply a whole load of complexity science to looking at that. You can apply a lot of Snowden's work, whether it's Cynefin or whether it's um, barriers and constructors and attractors and all those complexity science concepts. You can apply them to conversation.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Well then, we finished that one.
Okay, let's go on to mine because
Sure.
as I said, you asked me before we started had I had any thoughts to think about, and as ever I said, well, yes, but I've been skiing off piste as well, we're not really off piste, because our interest is both in conversation and conversational leadership, but also in knowledge management. So I I don't know how this started. I think I came across the work because a lot of my interest is in science and evolution, sort of really big picture stuff. And so I'd come across this work from a woman, um, a astrophysicist called what's her name? Sarah Imari Walker, and she's got
Okay.
her informational theory of life. Now, I'm not gonna go into that, but that's sort of just looking at some evolution and the evolution of complexity, how come the universe is complex as it is? How come life is as complex as it is? Um, so it was an interesting view on complexity. I also came across another gentleman, I can't remember his name now. I think it's maybe John Archibald Wheeler. He coined the phrase "it from bit." So there's a whole, and again, these are all rather um, contentious theories about the universe. So his idea is that the universe is made, the fundamental um, components of the universe are um, not atoms and quarks and what have you. It's bits, it's information. So again, this was getting me thinking about information. And then another gentleman, I think Robert Keegan, talking about something called functional information. And again, this is all in the context of looking at the complexity of the universe. But somewhere in there, I came across something that I was kind of familiar with, but I'd never really delved into, and that was the work of Gregory Bateson, um, and his famous phrase that information was a difference that made a difference. And so,
Hmm.
the in the KM world and the computing world, information is the stuff of books, reports, databases, anything that's written down pretty much is seen as information. Now, Gregory Bateson saw it very differently to that. So what he meant by a difference that makes a difference was if I gave you a book, actually, I think no, you can't speak any Japanese, can you? But if I gave you a book in English,
Maybe
you
two
better make
words.
sense of it. Even though you're American, you'd better make some sense of it.
Hmm.
So that book for you would convey information. And I use the word convey deliberately because the information isn't actually in the book or in the writing. It's sort of like in the in between. I'll come back to that.
Hmm.
So you wouldn't find any information in Gregory Bateson's terms. You wouldn't find any information. You would find information in an English book because you'd be able to interpret the squiggles on the page, but you wouldn't find information in a Japanese book, assuming you couldn't speak uh, Japanese. So the first point is that information is relational. You need an object, you need an observer, and the observer needs to be able to interpret that object and make some sense of it to them in a way that makes a difference to them, i.e., if it makes no difference to them, if the difference that they're perceiving makes no difference to them, then again, it's not information.
Hmm.
So if I told you you were going to London tomorrow, long way to go tomorrow, and it's raining, you might know to take your umbrella. So that's information. If I told you it was raining in Bangladesh last week, that would not be seen as information because it's simply, out of context. It just simply wouldn't have any meaning to you. It wouldn't make any difference to you. So this whole idea of his is seeing information as relational and contextual. But then also when you start to see it that way, it's not just writing that conveys information. Everything conveys information.
Yeah.
A pen, a desk, a chair, a door, a house, they all at least potentially convey information. If you can make sense of them, if you can interpret what you're looking at, and it means something to you in a way that changes you in some way,
Mm.
then it's information. So it's a whole different way of looking at information compared to the traditional information management, knowledge management, everyday view of information when we say, hey, if it's written down in a book, it's information.
What
Yeah, go on.
what pops up for me as you say it is, I've talked about this with conversations a few times. Um, and I don't know if it's like a agreement we have. Maybe it doesn't matter, but like, um, if we were to just chat a bit again about like the weather for a few minutes,
Mm-hmm.
I think you and I would both pretty much agree. Maybe we might go so far as to say that wasn't a conversation. But really what we're saying is like the quality of conversation, the depth, the making a difference in
Does
the
it make a
conversation.
difference?
Did it
Yeah.
make a difference? And
Does it make a
I don't know. I
difference?
think that's a fair debate. I tend to come from the side of if we talk about um, our commute or the weather, typically, most times I would say it wasn't a very impactful conversation. It was like a level one conversation or a very, dare say, low quality conversation or just not impactful conversation. And I'm trying not to put like a quality, but then weirdly, I am saying, oh, there's a bunch of things you can do to have much more impactful conversations, right? So like that, I'm hearing the same thing in the information. It's like, well, if you tell me it's raining in Bangladesh, that's of no value, so it's not information. I don't know that I can go that far to, I might go the more quality route and say, well, it's not very impactful, quality filled,
You could say it was low,
relevant,
you could
important
say it was low
information, but it
quality
is.
information. Even the Japanese book, you would recognize it as a book, and you would recognize it as some form of written text that you couldn't understand. And in that sense, there is a, a little information there, a lot less information than if it was in English, but there is information there. But this also touches on Claude Shannon's ideas around information, and he was the theorist that was really one of the grandfathers of well, modern day computing. He was the guy who invented the concept of the bit, and he was looking at information as how best to communicate it and store it, regardless of meaning. And one of the again, he's got his own little catchphrase as well. They all seem to have their catchphrases, and so for him, um, can't remember the exact phrase, but basically he's saying um, the if you convey a message, the bigger the surprise, the larger the surprise, the more you are surprised by the message, the more information there is in the message. And he's actually got a way of actually measuring it in terms of bits. So if I told you it was, again, using the rain analogy, it's going to rain in England tomorrow, he would say there's very little information in that. But if I told you it was going to rain on the moon tomorrow, that would contain a massive amount of information.
Hmm.
In terms of quantity. He's just measuring it in bits in quantity because it's that he's looking at information as a measure of surprise, and the idea of it
Okay.
raining on the moon would be
I
be a
wonder,
pretty big surprise. But
so
it
then
kind of relates back to Gregory Bateson's views in some way as well.
we've been slightly philosophical today, so maybe I'll slightly go in that direction. As you're saying that, what's going on in my brain is um, destiny is the word I'm thinking because I'm like,
Okay.
I have this little belief that, it'd be fun to go back and forth on a little bit of a belief that whatever goes on in your life, I don't want to say it was designed or destined, but I want to say it's loaded with learning or growth or opportunity for
Hmm.
you. I kind of believe that. But then I also have a little bit of a belief that no, things are just happening. So like, I can kind of see both sides. But if we go down that path of like back to it's raining in Bangladesh, maybe on its surface, just the Japanese book came up for me. If I look at a Japanese book, you're right. With 1 second of effort, if I just flip through it, I'm going to say, David, I'm sorry. Like, I can't read this. But if you hand me that book and said, this is going to change your life, you need to go study Japanese for 3 years. And I go off and study and learn and build up and then come back and read this book. And now
You say, David, you were talking rubbish. I've just wasted 3 years of my life.
you're learning Japanese, right? And that's that destiny thing of like, I think even it's raining in Bangladesh. With further study, it's kind of like as I'm sitting here and breathing, or I'm watching cars drive by me, seemingly of no value. But I wonder if it's infinite what we could take in. Why do we have the filters we
I guess we
choose?
don't always know what's of value to us at the
Exactly.
moment.
How do you
Um,
unpack the value of it?
and there's some wisdom in recognizing value even when it doesn't seem like value. But again, I say we're talking philosophically here, and my interest in information is kind of scientific, kind of philosophical. But then having got what I'm trying to do is to get my head around all those different concepts and different ways of looking at information, and then sitting back and saying, okay, what does that mean for conversation? What does that mean for conversational leadership?
Hmm.
Uh,
And do you
because
have like a first thought, anything jumping up as to what
um,
it from bit means for
well,
conversation?
in some ways, nothing new. I mean, conversation is relational. Conversation is contextual. I mean, reading a book, and in some ways having a conversation, there's some similarities there in terms of the information's not in the book. The information's carried by the squiggles on the page, and the same with a conversation. The information's not in the words. It's in the meaning it's in the meaning we make of the differences, if you like. Um, and so I guess it's just given me a different lens, an alternative lens for looking at conversation. And I'm hoping that that there'll be some insights that come from that. Uh,
Then maybe the one last thing
yeah,
I'll say, because Instagram is always listening and knows what to share. There's a post I saved yesterday that I think is directly relevant. Let me see if I can find it. I've got it right here. Yes. ASAP Science.
ASAP
ASAP
science.
Science. Um, I don't know. I'll have to like share this with you. It's got two audio files, and the first one is robotic and you can't understand it, and the second one is like it's like beep boop beep boop in the first one, and in the second one it actually is spoken in English. And the
Okay,
research they're doing, or the point they're trying to make, is the first one, here to our point, it sounds like nothing. It sounds like no information of no value to me. The second one is a framework. It's actually the real English version before the filters they placed on the first one, if that makes sense. So in English, you can understand the second one perfectly. But
right.
if you listen to the beep boop robotic sound after listening to the English one, you can, in your brain, think you understand the first one. And in
Okay,
fact, it is true. It is the same thing. It's just, it's got filters on it. The
right,
point of the
right.
message
Okay.
is this is sort of how life works. You get these
Uh-huh.
life frameworks, and then your brain says, there, and what they find, and this is the part that shocks me a little bit, is if I go back 5 years from now and I listen to that robotic sound or I hear it out somewhere, I'm gonna know what it is because they're finding the frameworks are nearly permanent. The frameworks stick with you.
Okay.
So in that, isn't that interesting for conversation? What is your conversational, and I know you and I sort of are not big fans or debate or wonder about frameworks, but I think they do. They sort of potentially stick and give you a way to see and relate to information and other people and the flow of the conversation because you have some framework, even if you're maybe not aware of the framework you're using.
I guess at times we're all using frameworks of various kinds
And can you name
that
it?
we're
Can
not
you
aware
label
of,
it? Can you see
as you
it?
say.
And can you be open to a different framework?
Yeah.
That's I think there's conversational leadership there.
It's kind of interesting about information. You just reminded me of Steve Jobs. The story goes that what did he do at university? Because I think he dropped out, but I think he was going in and sitting in a lot of the lectures that he was interested in, just out of interest, I guess, I think just out of curiosity. And one of them was on calligraphy and typesetting.
That's right. Yeah, I remember this
And
one. Yep.
that was just out of interest. And then it wasn't until he came to Apple and was putting the first machine that he realized the relevance of what he had studied. And it reminded me at school, geometry. I can never see, what do I need to understand all this geometric stuff? And then my first job as a computer-aided design engineer, it was all about geometry. It was all about all that stuff I've been taught in school that had no relevance at the time. And you could say wasn't information at the time, but now all of a sudden, 5 years later, it was uh,
hmm
it was of relevance.
hmm How do you know?
Life
How
is
do you?
fascinating, is it not?
It is, and it makes for decent conversation.